stillness. William James was one of the great pioneers of modern psychology, I think very widely regarded as great, even if many psychologists and neuroscientists disagree with various things he has said. Truly brilliant, really groundbreaking writing. His Principles of Psychology is still a classic. And he was right there in the first generation. He was at Harvard for like 40 years. And he suggested, as in this new experimental discipline of experimental psychology, that there should be a three-pronged approach to really be all-embracing, to really get a multi-perspectival approach to understanding the mind. He said we should approach it in three different ways to understand this natural phenomenon of the mind. One is we should explore the mind indirectly by way of behavior. We can draw many valid inferences about the mind by observing people's behavior, including what they say. And then, so that's one. Behavior is not insignificant as behavioral expressions of the mind, mental activities. The second one, we should be studying brain correlates, because they're clearly implicated in the mind, strongly related. So let's understand the mind indirectly by studying the brain, good objective science. And thirdly, and I quote, "First, foremost, and always, we should rely on introspection, the direct observation of mental events, exactly like all other fields of natural science. Observe the phenomena you're seeking to understand." So that was his approach. And it was abandoned almost entirely when psychology came under new management. And it was John Watson, 1910, was quite pivotal. Later it was B.F. Skinner. But they threw out lock, stock, and barrel. Introspection is completely useless and really focused on the objective and physical. So everything was reduced to behavior and brain. With psychoanalysis, I don't mean to overstate, psychoanalysis takes first-person experience seriously, observing one's dreams and so forth. So that's there, but in terms of mainstream academic psychology, it's very marginalized. And for some reasons that seem to be very good. I'll be very brief here, as usual. And that is, how can introspection possibly be scientific? I mean, the hallmark of scientific inquiry is it's objective. And what's more subjective, not objective, than observing your own mind? Isn't that totally subjective? And therefore, how could anybody ever validate anything? And how could you ever build on anything? Because, well, he saw this, they say, but I don't know. This person said they experienced this, but I don't know. And they say, I don't know. How could you ever build a science out of that? Physics, yes. Biology, neuroscience, behaviorism, yes. And so that's not a rhetorical question. And so if we recall what Roger Penrose just said, and he's not alone in this, mathematicians are making discoveries with mental awareness, and they're perceiving truths that they can corroborate, they can intersubjectively validate. So even though I can't pop into your mind and seeing what you're seeing when you're a mathematician probing this mathematical realm of reality, nevertheless, I can go through my wormhole, check out that realm of mathematical reality. I can observe things, and then I can see, did you observe that too? And if we're highly trained, go way beyond amateur status, then this has happened many, many times. Mathematicians make discoveries and other mathematicians corroborate them, even though they're not clairvoyant, but they're intersubjectively validating their individual subjective, observations. And so Sir Andrew Weil, when he proved Fermat's last theorem, he first thought he'd proved it, and a Princeton mathematician showed that he hadn't. There was a flaw, one flaw in like a 100-page proof. And then all the other mathematicians who were up to that caliber, they recognized this is a flaw. And then he went back to the drawing board several years later, had his epiphany, and then actually proved it. And then all the other pure mathematicians in working in number theory, they looked at it as proof of Fermat's last theorem that was widely considered to be unprovable. And they all agreed. So Andrew, sir. He got a knighthood and he got award after award after award because they all recognized he did it. Where's the objective evidence? There's no objective evidence. When I was studying advanced calculus, I asked my professor, when does a proof take place? And he said, when you get it. And so when you get it is when I get it. And so this has been going on since Pythagoras. Discoveries are made that are entirely subjective, but they can intersubjectively be corroborated or repudiated. Because when the Princeton mathematician showed that Andrew Weil had made a flaw, an error in his reasoning, all the other mathematicians looked at it, and then Andrew Weil looked at it and said, yeah, you're right. Shoot. And then he went back to the drawing boards. And so I can say this with a lot of confidence, even though I have no high realization, But I do know in 1,200 years of history of Tibetan Buddhism, let alone the other 1,200 years before they started, that the yogis on the highest caliber throughout history, Dudjom Rinpoche, Ledap Rinpoche, Khenze Wombo, Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, the list goes on and on. The creme de la creme, the Nobel laureates among contemplative, highly realized Buddhist contemplatives of all traditions. Chöpke Tijin Rinpoche in the Sakya tradition, and Chodin Rinpoche in the Gelugpa tradition, fabulous, and so many others. These creme de la creme, they have made discoveries that they can corroborate among each other. People on lower level don't have a clue. But they make discoveries, and they have similar training. And it's not brainwashing, it's really doing the hard work. And the creme de la creme know the creme de la creme. Just like the highest level physicists, they know the highest level physicist. The highest level mathematicians, they know each other. The lower ones don't know the higher ones know the lower. And it's intersubjective. And so it is with the contemplatives as well. I'm utterly persuaded of that. In Tibet, where there was, what was it, one monastery for every 1,000 people. 6,000 monasteries, 6 million people. There really was a whole organization to cultivate yogis, and then they were making discoveries that were corroborated time and time and time again for 1,000 years and longer. And so what we're doing here, we can say, but what about objectivity? And that is, when you're observing the mind with the mind, there's no real distance, there's no real separation. Like when Galileo looked at the Jupiter didn't mind, it wasn't influenced by his observations, right? It's totally objective. And then he discovered moons, and everybody could corroborate that with their own telescope. But when you're observing your mind, where's the demarcation between object and subject? And isn't it true that in many cases, if not all, when you're making an observation of a thought, an image, an emotion, doesn't your observation already influence it? In which case, what happened to your objectivity? And so that sounds like, that's a good point. And then we think about quantum mechanics. Until quantum mechanics, right through classical physics, you're studying electromagnetic fields and they're really out there. And you're studying atoms and particles and they're really out there. And they're presumed to be already out there and independent of your measurement. That was totally assumed by everybody, that the physical world is out there with its particles, its waves, its mass, energy, and it's absolutely out there. Observe it, and you're getting what God saw. And then quantum mechanics came along. And in quantum mechanics, and this is universally accepted what I'm about to say, before you make a measurement, there's nothing really out there. It's a field of possibility. It's a wave function. It's a probability function. Probability function doesn't exist objectively. There's no something out there that's called, hi, I'm a probability function. It's a word. But what is true is, and it's unequivocally, universally affirmed and corroborated by the top researchers in the field, before you measure an electron, it's not already there waiting. It's a potentiality. You make a measurement, and then the potential becomes actual relative to your system of measurement. But the act of measurement, everywhere in quantum mechanics, the act of measurement influences that which you're measuring. Before the measurement, it's a possibility, a potentiality, which you can calculate with a Schrödinger wave equation. But every time you make a measurement in quantum mechanics, it always influences. Because the system of measurement and that which you're measuring are entangled. It's not one thing just bumping into something independent. And quantum mechanics is the most successful branch of physics. So I think for multiple reasons, quantum mechanics, pure mathematics, making discoveries in the realm of mathematics, there's no reason why introspection could not be, as William James envisioned, absolutely central to making and replicating discoveries about the nature of the mind, the origins of consciousness, and so on. So I think this is the missing piece. The behaviors have done a marvelous job. Many, many advances. I say with respect. Many advances not made in Buddhism. So behavioral psychology has a lot to offer. And brain science, there's no brain science in Buddhism. Forget about it. We don't know anything about the brain, except that we have one. That's it. And so Buddhists have something to learn from brain science. Absolutely, yes. But what they don't have, the Buddhists have. Other contemplative, absolutely. Buddhists might know best. Has so much to contribute. So we just put these three together as William James envisioned 130 years ago. And maybe a long-awaited revolution can take place. And revolutionize mental health care, as well as understanding what it means to be human And where did our mind comes from? And what happens at death? Why should these remain a mystery? And I would suggest the only reason they're a mystery is when we haven't been looking, or we've been looking in the wrong place. And on a joke. I read it from John Searle, the philosopher of mind. Many of you heard it. It's the drunk who's lost his keys. And he goes out at night, and he's swaggering around, and he goes to a lamppost, and he's looking around, and the guy says, "What are you looking for?" And he says, "I'm looking for my keys." He said, "Oh, did you lose them here?" He said, "No, I lost them over there, but this is where the light is." Where the light of science is in the objective, physical, and quantifiable. That's what they're good at. That's where all the light is. That's where you get money. That's where you get grants. That's where you have laboratories. The objective, physical, quantifiable, they're really good at it. So where are scientists looking for consciousness? In the brain. That's where the light is. Is consciousness in the brain? Nope. But why should that bother you? And so sooner or later we're going to say, well, why don't you shine the light in another direction, like where it is, and do what we're doing here? Because this is not religion. It's not indoctrination and not just thinking. This is science. So let's have some fun. In this session now, it's going to be silent. And I invite you to put all the pieces together into one coherent practice. Settle in the stillness of awareness, observe the space of the mind, including objective appearances, subjective impulses, and the space. And so if you're just observing that shamatha, in the second half, if you would like, you can start introducing contemplative science. Contemplative technology is shamatha. It's developing the tool. Contemplative science is posing questions. It's vipassana. It's what scientists do. Stargazing is shamatha on the stars. Astronomy is vipassana on the stars. Galileo practiced astronomy. It was not just a stargazer, because he posed questions. And so, in the second half, as you've kind of got your telescope stabilized and focused on the space of the mind, and you're seeing events come and go, if you just simply continue, that will be shamatha. But if you start posing questions, these events coming up, are they permanent, impermanent, changing, unchanging? Are they true sources of happiness or not? Are they I or mine or not? How do they emerge? Where are they located? Where do they go? Those are questions for which there can be answers. And that's vipassana. So one silent session. Yay! Buonasso. So we're just about halfway through the retreat, right? Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and we've gone through about 1/4 of the notes. So I'll start speaking really fast now. But let's try to encroach a little bit into the assault on Sautrantika to see where its weaknesses are. And I'll just try to cover one point. We have only 10 minutes before the break. And it's something from Buddhist epistemology. It goes right back to Dignaga and Dharmakirti, the great epistemologists, who are also the great logicians. And the texts they wrote are still studied and debated and memorized to this day, 1,400 years later in Tibetan monasteries all over first Tibet and now India and so on. And so here's some basic reasoning. And that is, it's called the black box effect, or the black box situation. It's very simple. It's a philosophical question, and it has to do with inferring causes based on their effects. You see the effect, and then you infer the cause. There are various types of inferences. This is one of the standard ones. The favorite example given in Tibetan logic, in which I was trained, debated, is you see smoke billowing up beyond yonder hill, and you see that smoke, and you say, there's fire over there. Okay? Very obvious. You can't see the fire, but you see the smoke, and then you infer the cause of the smoke, and then call the fire department. So very straightforward. But how can you do that? How is it? What enables you to infer the presence of fire by seeing something that is not fire, but rather an effect of fire? And here's what Dharmakirti, these great logicians, Dignaga and the Dharmakirti, say. In order to infer, and this means to know, not guess or have a hunch, but to know the cause based upon the effect, two things have to take place. You have to have two prerequisites. You have to see fire actually producing smoke. You have to see it. There's fire and there's smoke coming out of the fire. You have to see that. So now you see the connection. You see the connection, but that's not enough. You also have to know, and this could be a pretty broad database, that it requires fire. There must be fire for smoke to emerge. So it can't come from any other source, not from a dust storm or anything else. So you have to see it taking place, but you have to know also that smoke can only come from fire. And when you know those two things with certainty, then whenever you see smoke, you say there's fire. It's a done deal. But consider a black box. And a black box is a container, so it's a thought experiment. It's a container that is hermetically sealed and you can never look inside. But the box keeps on emitting effects, like maybe blinking lights or something else. So stuff comes out of the box, effects. Maybe it's a variety of effects. Maybe it's sound, maybe it's lights, whatever. But you can never look inside the box. So if you can't see inside what's actually causing the effects that you can see. So can you infer the causes if you never see them? Only by seeing the effects? And the answer is no. And even if you see fire producing smoke on one occasion, maybe something else can produce smoke. Who knows? In which case you can't infer fire from smoke if it could also be produced by rubbing your fingers together or whatever. So it's a very simple thing. Black box means you can't see inside, which means you cannot know the cause of the effect. You can't infer the cause from the effect if you never see the cause producing the effect and you don't know that that cause is necessary for producing this effect. It's very simple. So now let's come to where we live. Here we're seeing appearances. Color, shapes, etc. Dreams, all kinds of appearances by way of the six sense doors. But let's just look at all the colors here. And these are real. These are real, unless you're a materialist and you're just, hell-bent on, insisting that only material things do. And then you just say, appearances don't exist, which is just the craziest thing, I think said in any language. And people get away with it. Enough of that. Here are these qualia, here's the appearances, and they're clearly caused by something. They didn't happen just by chance. The colors you're seeing of the room, the qualia. Not asking about the atoms that are made of and molecules and all of that. No, just the colors you see. They are produced, they have effects, they're real in a matrix of causality, all clear. What's producing them? Where do they come from? The colors you see. Where do they come from? And we've already been through it. They're not coming, the colors you see are not coming from the molecules. Colors don't pop out of molecules. And molecules don't have any color. Atoms don't have color, elementary particles don't have color, electromagnetic fields don't have any color, photons don't have any color. There's nothing out there in the physical world that has any color to it. So where are the colors coming from? Where are any appearances coming from? And the scientific answer is not a clue. There's not even a theory. It's just not any theory at all. I mean, the colors coming out of your neurons, I mean, it's silly. They don't come out of photons. So here's an effect. This is an effect. And we now try to infer what's out there that's causing them. Even if they're not emerging from them, we've agreed, if you're a metaphysical realist, that the colors, okay, these are the subjective. These are what Democritus called conventions. They're relative to your sense faculties and so forth. But what's really out there, well, he posited space and atoms, which then Heisenberg said, that's finished, that didn't work out at all. But what's out there? We have this commonality of experience. This is something that just doesn't go away. The commonality of experience, we're probably all seeing brown. And so there's got to be something out there that is causing each of us to see brown and not some people see green and purple and yellow and so forth. And so what is it out there, objectively, out there in the real world that metaphysical realists insist exists and is knowable? What is it out there that causes us to see brown? Well, what's out there beyond appearances is a black box. Because whether you're looking through a telescope or a microscope or sonar or X-ray or the Large Hadron Supercollider, what you get, no matter what measurement system you're using, when you actually have made the measurement, what are you looking at? Appearances. Where are the appearances? In the space of your awareness. So what's out there that's causing those appearances? Well, let's just hop over the fence. There are the appearances. Let's hop over the fence and see what's on the other side, on the other side of appearances. Out there in the real physical world, in physical space. What's out there? And the problem is you can never do that. It doesn't matter whether you're an elementary particle physicist, cosmologist, an anatomist, neurologist, it just doesn't matter. You can never jump over the fence and see what's on the other side that's actually allowing for the commonality of the appearances we see. The external physical world, the objective physical world out there, the objective world, is a black box. You can never look inside. All you get are the appearances and their effects. The appearances from a Large Hadron Supercollider, X-ray, you name it, they're all appearances. Every single one, they're all appearances. But what's out there objectively that's causing the appearances, allowing for the consensuality of appearances? Nobody can ever see, because as soon as you look, whether it's with your eyes, your ears, or any instrument of technology, and you make a measurement, what you always get are appearances arising relative to your system of measurement. So if you look at the sun with your eyes, you see color. But if you feel it, if you turn your skin to the sun, you feel warmth. But what's out there that's causing the warmth and causing the light, the colors, independent of that or any other system of measurement? What's out there in the black box? And the answer is you never get to see. Nobody ever sees. Because whenever you see, you get more qualia. Every single time, whoever you are. Whether you're an ant or a deva or an astrophysicist, you just get more appearances. You make a measurement, you get appearances. Hubble telescope, appearances. So all those, we've seen those beautiful photos, so many of them, the Crab Nebula, and so many gorgeous photos of distant galaxies and nebula and so forth and so on. None of those appearances are out there. Deep space, independent of the Hubble telescope, doesn't look like anything. There's no appearances out there. The appearances are rising relative to the Hubble telescope, sending us messages, and then an astronomer looks at, and then the appearances are there. But the appearances are rising in the space of the mind of the astronomer. They're not in the Hubble telescope, and they're certainly not out there like the Hubble telescope as a flycatcher, just snatching images out of space. All of those images exist only in the space of awareness. So what's out there? And logically speaking, as you might recall, you can go back to that quote by, what was his name? The sociobiologist. Do you remember? No, so the sociobiologist. He wrote Consilience. What's his name? I just slipped it. Edward O. Wilson. Edward O. Wilson, the sociobiologist, and a first-rate one. He said, when you have your theories and you want to test it relative to what's really out there, you can't. He's saying this as a metaphysical realist and a materialist. But there's no measuring stick. You can't say, okay, now we found out what's really out there independently, and now we'll compare our observations with that. It's turtles all the way up and down. Its appearances all the way up and down. You can never compare your appearances, what's out there independent of appearances, because you just get more appearances. So what's out there when nobody's looking? Well, if there's a God that created it, he would know, but I don't think he's telling. And if there is no God out there, what's out there when nobody's looking? What's really out there? Because whenever we look in any which way, it's always appearances. Appearances arise in the space of your awareness. And what's out there causing them? And the answer is we don't know. There's no way to know. Because you might say atoms. Okay? As soon as you think atoms, what comes to mind? Images of atoms. Those are not atoms. Whatever comes to mind. Do you have an orbit? Do you have an idea of a little kind of a nucleus and then little electrons buzzing around like flies? That doesn't exist. That was thrown out about 1910 or so. It's a nice model, but it doesn't exist. It's complete hooey. Electrons don't have definite location and momentum at the same time. They don't look like anything. The nucleus doesn't look like anything. And quantum mechanics makes it totally unimaginable. So what's out there when nobody's looking? Well, you'd have to infer what's out there, the cause, the objective cause, based on the effects of what we can see, but you can never see the objective cause, and therefore all you have is a bunch of effects. And therefore, you can fill that black box with anything you imagine, but if that's all it is, just imagining. And so the rubber really hits the road here when we learn that the universe is not only expanding, but the rate of acceleration is increasing. You know that, yeah? And there's not enough energy, known energy in the world to account for that. There's complete consensus on this. And so why is the rate of acceleration in the universe increasing? Because the known energy is not nearly enough. But there's an effect for which they don't have the cause. And then the other one is, how is the universe so orderly? How do we have these nice clumps of planets and galaxies and stars? Why is it kind of nice and clumpy? Why do things stick together? Why is it not just, junk all over the place? Why does it hold together? And there's not enough mass in the known universe to account for it. So they have the effect that the universe is clumpy, more clumpy than expected, and it's expanding rapidly, more than expected. And they have these two effects. And they don't know what causes it. So let's give it a name. What accounts for the accelerating rate of the expanding universe? Dark energy. Because the only thing they know of that can make things expand, move away from each other, is energy. Matter always attracts, it's gravity. But energy, like a magnet, can push things away. So the only thing that could push things away would be energy of the known universe. But it's not any energy they know about. So they call it dark. Dark means we don't know anything about it. But we can call it energy because that's the only thing we know that can push things apart. What they're giving as a name for something about which they know nothing whatsoever. But they're claiming it. They're claiming it and say, we're going to call it energy. I call it seraphim. And dark energy, I call it cherubim. And my theory is as good as theirs. And of course, I'm speaking in tongue-in-cheek, but if you don't know anything at all, you can call it whatever you like. They call it we don't know energy and we don't know matter, as in dark, and I'm calling it seraphim and cherubim. Show me which one's right. If you don't know anything at all, you can say whatever you like, and I'm going to say seraphim and cherubim. Because they're groping literally in the dark. They don't see the cause, so they just make up something and then superimpose it in the hope it's true. But there are physicists that seriously question whether these words mean anything at all. All we know is the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate. So what do we really know? We're now going to the Sautranticus. And I have to stop quickly now. We're now going to the Sautrantic. What do you remember what they're saying? Which most of us would say, well, of course, I can't see the molecules and atoms of the wall, but I'm seeing the wall by way of these appearances. The appearances are in the space of my awareness. The wall isn't. It's in physical space. But I'm seeing the wall by way of appearances. And Chittamatra said, no, you don't. You're seeing appearances. That's all you ever see. You never see the wall. You're saying that, but you're not. You're saying the only things that are real are what you can perceive. All you can perceive are appearances. That's all you really perceive, and the rest is just talk. I'm seeing atoms by way of. Just a way of talking. All you're actually seeing is appearances. With all your technology, you're just getting more appearances. Appearances are all that you perceive. Appearances are all that's real. And you also can perceive your experience, your perception of appearances. So consciousness is real, appearances are real, and the rest is not real because you never see them. Nobody's ever seen an atom. Now, I was in Anton Seininger's laboratory back in 1998 with His Holiness, and he's a brilliant experimental physicist, one of the best. He should get a Nobel any time now. And he had this container, he took us into his laboratory. He had this vacuum chamber, and His Holiness was there. And what he did in his lab, this was before he got his position at the University of Vienna, he suspended a single atom in this vacuum. He suspended it with electromagnetic field so it would stay in place. And then he's got one atom, literally one atom suspended in a vacuum. And then he bombards it with photons. And if it's absorbed, it also emits. So he turned off the lights. We looked into this chamber, and we could see a little dot of light. And we were seeing a single atom. Except for we were not either. I was seeing a little dot of light. That's what I saw. A dot of light is not an atom, and that dot of light was taking place in the space of my awareness. I wasn't seeing an atom. I saw a dot of, it's pretty much what I see when I look at the star. Twinkle, twinkle. And so Chittamatra says, you have to cut back a little bit. You're living in a dream world. You're imagining that you're seeing a real physical world out there by way of appearances, but all you're actually seeing are appearances. And the rest is just a way of talking. And you're talking about something you can't even know in principle, because you never can look into the objective universe as it is prior to and independent of appearances. Nobody ever does. Now, Werner Heisenberg, and I'll end on this note. I really want to shake you up and give you a restless night's sleep tonight. Werner Heisenberg, this brilliant physicist, looking at these troubling implications of quantum mechanics, it was he who said, I paraphrase, he said, when they're seeing the implications of quantum mechanics, he said, we're finding this terrifying because we're feeling the very ground beneath our feet is giving way. It was really shaking them up, that the world is not at all like what we thought. That good, chunky world out there that we're seeing by way of appearances, a field of possibility. That's not chunky. It's not even real, and it's not even objective. Fields of probability don't exist out there someplace. They're a way of talking. So what Werner Heisenberg said, and then we'll take our break, is let us not attribute reality or existence to that which is unknowable in principle. Now the planet, the moons around Jupiter were unknown until Galileo saw them. That doesn't mean he invented them. They popped into existence when he saw them. That's silly. So they were knowable in principle before he looked. All somebody needed to do, have a 20-power telescope, that'll do it. Nobody had one until he made one. They were knowable in principle, they just weren't known yet. But can you posit things that are unknowable in principle? And yeah, the objective universe as it exists independent of all appearances, it's unknowable in principle. Nobody knows how to jump the fence to see what's on the other side of appearances. Nobody will ever know that, because whenever anybody looks, there's always going to get more appearances. Doesn't matter what the technology is. Doesn't matter whether you're clairvoyant, you see more appearances. Doesn't matter whether you're omniscient, you're going to get more appearances. And so an objective world, as it exists in and of itself, as Kant said, the Ding an sich, an objective world existing out there is unknowable in principle. Therefore, let us not attribute existence to that which is unknowable in principle, because if you do, you've said meaningless noise. It exists, but nobody can know it. Where's the explanatory power of that? It's nothing. You may as well not talk at all. Just don't talk at all. If something unknowable in principle, just shut up and don't attribute existence or non-existence to it, because you don't know. You just don't know at all. In which case, what do you know? We come back to Sautrantika. All right. Actually, we don't perceive atoms by way of colors because we don't know what's out there beyond the colors that's causing them objectively, which means maybe there's nothing causing them objectively. If it's unknowable, why attribute existence if it's unknowable? And so we come back to Sautrantika. What is known is what you can perceive. What can you perceive? What can you know directly and be certain of? Appearances and awareness, and nothing more. So what's real? Mind and appearances. That's it. And all notion of an external world with atoms and particles and fields and waves that exist out there, just a way of talking, has no existence at all. So it's diametrically opposed. It's a head-on collision. It's like matter and antimatter. The materialist coming and meeting the Chittamatrans, they're saying exactly the opposite thing. The materialists say only matter and its emergent properties are real, and consciousness and qualia don't exist at all, or they're just, just fluff. Don't rely on them, but they just actually don't exist at all. It's only matter that exists. And the Chittamatrans come along and say, the only things that do exist are the things that appear. And that's only appearances and awareness. And atoms, all that stuff you're talking about, all that material world that exists in and of itself exists only in the space of your mind, which is immaterial. It's a figment of your imagination. Because all that's real is appearances. It's mind all the way up and all mind all the way down. And that's what you know. And anything beyond that is just chatter. Empty chatter. With no existence whatsoever. So we'll end on this note. I keep on saying that, but I'll repeat it. Because it's so fun. And that is, let's just come back to William James. This will be actually very brief, but for the moment what you attend to is reality. How could intelligent people, because I never doubt the intelligence, Daniel Dennett, Graziano, Rosenberg, the Churchlands and so forth, they're very bright people. They're very educated people. That's not contestable. Why are they saying things that sound completely ridiculous? Introspection doesn't exist, consciousness doesn't exist. Why are they saying that? They're not stupid. And I think there's a reason. For the moment, what you attend to is reality. What do brain scientists do 12 hours a day? They look at brains. They're looking at brains. How many hours a day do they think they spent practicing introspection? 0 to a lot. So what is bound to appear real to the neuroscientist? The physical. What's bound to appear to be real to the physicist? The physical. What's bound to be real to a Tibetan yogi who spends 16 hours a day observing his mind? Mind. And physical, just a way of talking. So, welcome to the dream. Maybe there's no physical world out there at all. If there's anything out there, nobody knows about it, so why even talk about it? All we have is appearances. Oh, that's true of dreams too, isn't it? In dreams, it's only appearances. There's nothing physical in a dream. There's nothing physical behind the dream. It's just appearances that are completely empty. So is this a dream? A big intrasubjective dream? Good night. Have a good meal, and we'll come back at 8:15. Yeah, 7:45.